been banned from choosing lawful good characters. Apparently, if you are lawful good, you're not supposed to torture people.
It's somewhat frowned upon, but...
So, welcome to A Book and a Dream with Megan O'Russell, an author's adventure in writing, reading, and being an epic fangirl. Hello, and welcome to A Book and a Dream. Today, I have Mark from the Fandom Effect with me to talk about what makes a superfan and how we become obsessed with so many different enjoyable things. Thank you so much for coming on A Book and a Dream, Mark.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you took the time.
Of course. Now, I've listened to a few episodes of your podcast, and it seems like you are super immersed in the Comic-Con culture. Am I right? Am I misinterpreting that?
Yeah, I have been all over the spectrum. Like, there's really not one kind of distinct fandom that I'm a fan of. I'm just way too all over the board, which is very expensive.
That really is it is pricey. Fandom can come with massive amounts of expenses, actually. Like, you don't think about it when you fall in love with something and then suddenly you have 60 t-shirts and you're like, oh, I committed to this hardcore. Now, something that's super interesting to me is there are so many kinds of fandoms. Like, I am a huge fan of Doctor Who, huge fan of Harry Potter. And one thing that I find so interesting in books is how difficult it is for people to become a true super fan of a book series. Now, in all of your fanning, which book series have you connected to?
So it's changed throughout the years. I'm blanking on the first series as probably a kid when I was like 8 or 9. There's like a long series of, I guess, preteen books of like animals that have like swords and different stuff. It's excuse me. It's very interesting. It's very weird. It's like a medieval fantasy world, but if like rats and mice and dogs like were like the world and could run around and fight and be musketeers, and it was obviously very silly for the time. But as I've gotten older, there's two distinct series that I got very attached to so much where I stopped reading one because they made such a huge change that I got really upset and I stopped reading it for a long time. But Rune Lords is a series by David Farland, and I believe it's an 8-book series. And after book 4, they go with a drastic change for the other 4. And I think I stopped reading for like 2 years because I got so upset about the change that was made. And I think other than that, the Drizzt series is like a Dungeons and Dragons science fiction series. I think it's like 20 books now and it's still going. So yeah, it's very long books, but very good reads.
You're actually like the third person this week who's recommended the Drizzt series to me. I actually got an email from a reader being like, and by the way, you should read Drizzt. And I was like, oh, thank you.
It's really good.
I've only played Dungeons and Dragons like 3 times. So it's all like a very new world to me. I have a problem with being lawful good. I've been banned from choosing lawful good characters. Apparently, if you are lawful good, you're not supposed to torture people.
It's somewhat frowned upon, but...
So, yeah, we have like rules in place of what I'm allowed to choose to be now because tormenting goblins is not a thing that we do. So, in these series that you have found yourself becoming super involved in, what has drawn you? Because as an author and as a reader, on the author side, figuring out what creates a super fan is not only super important as a business model, but also, you know, as someone who wants to be a storyteller and wants to keep their people involved. And as a reader, it's hard to pinpoint what makes you connect on such a deep level to a series and what helps you find other people in that fandom. So what have you found to be the biggest factors in creating that emotional response?
So I think when it comes to, you know, books and fandoms in general, there's always going to be different things that are going to resonate with different people. But when it comes to me and, you know, when I read it in books, it's the subtle changes. And then like, as you're reading the book series, you know, you're reading it, you're enjoying it. And then all of a sudden, like, bam, you get hit with this, someone dies, or there's like a drastic change, or like a kingdom is destroyed, or something like that. And then it forces you to go back and rethink about the first few books that you've read, and you start seeing like all these little clues that the author had given to that this was going to happen, or this could potentially happen. And it's something where when something happens that you can think back to previous chapters or a previous book and realize that when those hints were all there, and you're like, oh crap, like that completely blew past me. And I think that's when you really appreciate like the actual writing that goes into it.
So this is out of your genre, I'm assuming. I don't want to make assumptions about what you read, but I've previously chatted on this podcast with the woman who runs the Marissa Meyer fan pod, basically. It's a Prince Kai fan pod, so it's the Lunar Chronicles. And I was talking with her, and I did not know the series. I had been like totally against reading the series because it had a high heel on the cover of the first book. And I was like, women who like kick butt don't do it wearing high heels. That's why Black Panther is such a good movie, because she takes off her heels before she kicks people in the face. Practical. And in her podcast, she dissects each chapter, like down to the minutia. And that's one of the things that she talks about too, is the Easter eggs, the little hidden gems. And I'm like, I've been a huge, obviously, Harry Potter nut job since, I was not even old enough to drive a car. So very, very long time at this point. And that is one of the things that is so cool about the Harry Potter fandom, is like people will start picking apart, like, when's the first time you saw this? Like, how does this happen? And that's very cool that it expands beyond the book fandom. It's not just the people who cling to their bookshelves that live for the Easter egg moments. Now, because, you do have fandoms that expand beyond the written word, which is so mind-blowing to me because I'm such a book person. What are some of the coolest experiences you've had as a fan and as a podcaster?
So, yeah, it's been very interesting, and one of the reasons why the Fandom Effect name even came to be is, whenever I have certain friends, like, oh, they're a football guy, or they're a sports guy, or they're this, but, I've been so vastly over the map. I've done MMA for multiple years. I've done different trainings. I've been all over the place. And
you really like loving things, don't you? Like, you're really into just loving these different genres and things to do.
I've learned to at least try something depending on what it is, at least once. Like Doctor Who was something that for the longest time, and I do want to make sure I answer your question, but you mentioned Doctor Who earlier, and I refused to watch for the longest time. Even though it fit in what you would consider my wheelhouse, I just was like, I don't know, like British TV, like I really don't. It sounds like it's up my alley, but I don't know. So for years and years and years, refused to watch it. And then I finally had a friend. I went over to his apartment in college, and he was like, I'm putting it on. If you don't like it, like, we're going to drink and I'm going to put it on. If you don't like this episode, I'll never bring it up again. And you put on season 1, the Weeping Angels.
Oh, it's so
episode.
Good. It's so good.
Yeah. So he played it and he was like, all right, what do you think? And I'm like, so what was episode 1? And he was like, yeah, that's what I thought. And then he put it on, and well, there you go.
I have my problem, like, we're going on a bender here, but my problem with Doctor Who is, and either this is a spoiler for you or you don't care, or because they do change doctors. It's a thing. I have a problem when I know it's the doctor's last episode. I can't make myself watch it. I haven't watched Peter Capaldi's last episode yet because I know I'm going to be a shattered mess. And I'm not emotionally prepared. Like, I watched the last episode of Matt Smith. I was in cast housing in Alaska, I guess. And I was sitting on a couch sobbing hysterically because I knew it was my last episode with Matt Smith. And like, people were coming out of their rooms to check on me. They thought like my mother had died because I was sobbing. And so I can't continue with the series because I can't move past it. It's so hard.
No, I understand. It's that disassociation. You get like so engrossed with it. And when you know it's coming, you just kind of like almost want to like zone out from the show you've been a fan of for so long.
It would almost be better if I didn't know it was their last episode. But because I know it is, I like can't make myself press play.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. I guess a very long way of answering your question. I've had different experiences doing different things. Just being a fan in general, going to conventions that I've been able to meet voice actors I've been a fan of, celebrities. I like volunteered at a con and I worked with Rob Schneider. Spoiler, he's a huge he's a huge dick. You can believe it if you need to, but ooh. Yeah, I worked with him for a day and I've ruined Rob Schneider for multiple friends. But who knows? I don't know. Maybe it was a bad day. I don't know. But for podcasting, I would say I had podcast before, but the Fandom Effect's only about a month and a half old. But I actually just recently did an interview that will actually air probably after this is released, but where I interviewed a current Funimation voice actor who's worked on a couple different animes that I'm actually a huge fan of, and he's a new lead in a new anime. And I just got to sit down and talk to this person with Funimation about, how do you be a voice actor? Like, what's it like recording in, a recording studio, stuff like that. And now, have a contact who's willing to say, well, if you find someone at Funimation that I've worked with and you want to try to interview them, like, I'll do what I can to help you out. And so that just happened 3 days ago and, was huge.
That's amazing. No, I think so. The Comic-Con circuit is like, and any conferences really, I'm like a quasi introvert, like not really an introvert, but not like a crowd person. So conferences are terrifying to me. And I've like had my books in conferences, but I've never gone to said conference because I don't want to be in a room with that many people. And I know the same can be said for a lot of readers. And what would you recommend for people trying to find their community? What parts of the fandom have you found most welcoming, and how can you locate where you're going to find a really healthy place to just revel in the joy of this thing that you love?
Yeah, so I think the thing to always be aware of is that there's always going to be a bad apple in every fandom. I've experienced numerous things, but it's, conventions have a very tight community, very welcoming. So if you are interested in that area of conventions, and, whether it's cosplay or just meeting, you want to actually meet the people that are being paid to be the convention, or, whether it's the events or something like that, it's really just trying. I've talked to random people online that I have never seen or talked to, and some of them it was just you were friends for that half an hour you were in line, and some have been friends 6 years later. So I wouldn't say there's one fandom over another that I would say like, oh, go into this, go into that, because, when you're getting into a new fandom, you're going to want to like dip your toe in the water. I would never advise like jumping all in because, as I've said, fandoms are very expensive. You don't want to spend a lot of money on something and then to realize that you don't enjoy it. So start out simple, buy a subscription to Crunchyroll or Funimation that it's like $5 a month and just try watching a random anime. Subscribe to the DC Universe app and read some of the older comics they have up and some of the original content they have. So like find things like that. If you're like, like yourself, if you're kind of like an introvert and going out to experience a fandom might be a little bit overwhelming, try finding a virtual fandom. A lot of these apps have forums and contests and stuff like that. And so you can start there and talk to people about a show that you found that you're interested in or something like that, and just kind of like slowly build up from there. And then if something's popular enough, it might have its own convention and you can just kind of morph into, one thing to another thing and then slowly just expand out. And, I've always told everyone, find that show, like for me with Doctor Who, that a friend's always been bugging you about, and just watch an episode. We all have an hour to spare, and I've had drastic life changes from just finding something new that I could be invested in.
Now, here's a question that I did not send you or prepare you for. It seems like in your answers for everything that you have become a true like super fan of, diving deep into, there has already been an established place to deep dive into. So the places to subscribe, the Easter eggs, the back orders, the list. Have you ever come in on the ground level of a fandom where there's really not that material available yet?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know. Growing up, getting into, anime wasn't as big growing up as it is today. There wasn't, it was on different TV channels or stuff late at night, but it wasn't really there was no websites that had anime on it. Funimation and Crunchyroll weren't really a thing. The convention scene didn't really have much of an anime aspect to it. So, it obviously it existed vastly well before I was born. There was obviously animes in the 60s and 70s, but I'd say that would probably be the only, thing that I had to kind of go into a little blind growing up, because I didn't have a lot of friends that were as into it. My parents had zero idea what it was. My brother and my sister had zero idea what it was. So I was the only person in the family that would sit down and watch the majority of this. So, doing research or finding things on a website was mainly just random Google searches. But for the rest of it, it's mainly just I would find something that I would like and then realize oh, look at that. There's all these things connected to it. And then I would just kind of start diving into it.
Now, for anime, since you did kind of get in, at least it seems on the American front with anime, how did it feel when it started expanding to all of these other people? Did it feel like you were at the center of a community, or did it feel like these people were getting resources that you had never had and it wasn't fair that it was so easy? Or what was that experience like for you?
So it's different now. So I kind of had two viewpoints on it, one before pre-kid and one after kid. So pre-kid, it was, when you were seeing bigger conventions, and when I discovered the convention scene in general, it was Jesus, where was the knowledge that these conventions were a thing, when I was 14, 15 and could have met all these people that, have been going to all these things, growing up. There were some conventions that have been going on for a while, but I didn't have friends that went to them. So I did not know they were a thing. So discovering conventions were an actual thing was wait a minute, you mean I can go somewhere and cosplay and meet these people I've seen on TV and, get really cool artwork and, things of that nature. And it's a weird feeling because you feel cheated, but at the same way you're yay, it's finally time where I can experience more stuff. Post kid, I'm just happy about it because it's much easier to introduce my son to different things than it was for me growing up. Growing up, if there was a show that I was interested in or if that I heard about, well, if it wasn't on a TV channel we had, or if I didn't know of a website to use it, I didn't watch it. It wasn't something I could actually do. But now with Netflix and Hulu and so many different things, there's an anime I'm a huge fan of called One Piece, and it's all pirates and stuff. And Netflix just put up the first 4 seasons of it. And I've been watching this since I was 15. So it's been going on for 15 years, and It's probably not going to end for about another 5. It's the longest running anime in history.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So with Doctor Who, when this anime ends, if any of the main characters die, I will cry massive amounts of tears because I've been watching it for 15 years. That's why I cried during Endgame. I've been watching every Marvel movie since the first one.
Yeah, Endgame was invested. A wreck, man. It was.
Yeah. It was tough. It was tough. But he's now watching it with me from, this thing that started in I think 99 or however long ago it was.
Wow.
And now we're watching an episode or 2 a day together, and he knows the characters now. He's getting super interested in it. I mean, he's only 2.5, so there's a limit to what he actually knows what's going on. But that side of it's really great in making those amazing memories, because those are the memories that I think back to of different fandoms, whether it's books or different things. And now I see the flip side of it with a kid. And so I'm happy for the ease of certain things.
It is so cool. I'm going to go with the word cool to watch the next generation get interested in things that you've experienced. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, Wait, no. Oh, geez, they're 4 and 6. I'm
Oh
so
wow,
old.
they're growing up on this podcast.
Yeah, age quickly. But they're 4 and 6, and so watching them start to read books that I read when I was little, like even handing over the books to them, I'm like, but you're not gonna like drool on it. And like we understand there's like no crayons allowed in the room with this. And so there is like a certain part of me that's very like, don't destroy this thing that I love. But at the same time, it's like, but also you had better like this, because in 10 years, we're going to talk about it and this is going to be a thing. So like, get on board now, kid, because you are reading every Madeline L'Engle book in all of Narnia, whether you like it or not, because I'm your aunt and I get to say so. I mean, not really, but I like to pretend I do because I'm like the only aunt. So what else are they going to do?
I mean,
like,
it works.
Yeah. Like, you're not going to get Christmas presents from anyone else, kid. Like, you got to do what I say.
Yeah, take what you can get.
Yeah. So if you were going to point people to a fandom, like we have a bunch of readers who love books. Books are hard. Books are so hard to find a fandom of. And I don't know if it's because there's so many or if it's because books are like inhabited by introverts. But unless it's like Harry Potter, Marissa Meyer, or Twilight, like you kind of get a little screwed there. So if they wanted to dive into a fandom other than downloading the apps, where would you say is the best place to start? Like, is there a specific website, a specific genre? Like, what is a great entry point into the epic fandom world?
Yeah. So honestly, comic books is a really good way to start. And so honestly, Google what your nearest comic book shop is and just go, because a lot of these places have books and like different things from all over, a lot of things from like third party. So it's not all just like I know some people are like, oh, I don't want to read something that's super mainstream and Marvel and DC. Well, a lot of these places have like books from third party publishers or independent people and things like that. So that's honestly a great and cheaper way to go, because a cheap comic is like $4 and a book's like 15. And so that's a great way to start. If you're into reading and, different book series, go and, I don't know, like see if you find a cover that interests you. If you grew up reading about a certain superhero, you grew up watching one, the vast majority of these things have books tied to them. So that's honestly a great way to start, is just go to your, and because they have like all these things from the past, they'll have like old school, like 80s toys and, like just really cool things. I bring my son, not anymore with everything going on, but I used to bring him to the comic book shop and he would pick out a comic himself. So I'd show him different things and he would pick a cover. And then he started learning all these different people based on just picking up random books. And so if you're kind of looking to branch out, that would be my advice, because it's cheaper. You get to kind of see more of the local area, wherever you are. And there's so many other things tied to that, whether it's cosplay, TV shows, all that stuff, all of it's tied into a comic book shop, because a lot of these places will have TVs. And I know the one that I go to where I am in Wisconsin, he's always playing old Doctor Who
nice.
in the shop. So whenever I go, I usually just chill for a few minutes and I wind up watching some Doctor Who. But a lot of these guys too are people that have had different backstories of movies. Like the guy I went to in Michigan used to direct horror movies and knew all these people who directed like old school, like Hobo with a Shotgun and really just crappier 80s sci-fi movies. And so, you just never know. Like a lot of these guys have really cool backstories and they can fill you in on different things to try and look into.
Okay, so I'm going to start tying into the final 4 questions because these two match really well. So if you could choose one comic book, not necessarily the comic book, but character storyline to recommend for people as a starting point, which would you choose?
Ooh, I don't know, because it's going to depend on what you like, because Red Hood and Green Lantern are some of my favorite heroes to read on, but it's for a selective audience. You might hate that aspect of it. So I know we've mentioned books, so I would actually just recommend the Rune Lord series to everyone.
Okay.
By Salvatore. So it's an amazing series, very different concept. you can take attributes from some other people and give them to yourself. So it's like the rich people could be like, well, you're really poor, so I'm going to pay you a bunch of money, and I'm going to take the strength that you have, and I'm going to give it to me. So now I have the strength of 2 people, and I'll just take care of you for the rest of your life. And so it's very like, that's the base concept for the world, is that people just take the things they want from other people. Like, oh, you can see really good? Okay, I'll take that. You know, you're going to be blind, but I'll take that. You know, I'll pay you for it. But it goes into a lot of different stuff, and it's very, you know, obviously fantasy esque, but it's a little bit older. It's probably from like mid 2000s, but to me, it's an amazing book series. So I would actually recommend, for a book series, I'd go with that. For comics, I would just say go with what you think looks interesting. You know, research people's backstories and just find something that you think inspires you, and then just check it out.
Great. Now, for the final 4 questions, if you could recommend just one book, which would you choose?
So, man, these are it's tough.
I know, that's why I have to ask them, because everyone goes, ugh.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with The Hobbit. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan.
Okay.
And so for like the one book, The Hobbit, as a intro to that book series in general, it's a shorter book too. I think it's only like 200 pages or so, so it's not a long book compared to a lot of other ones. But I will read that Hobbit book over and over again. That or Ready Player One, movie. So it's before the movie, and is a really good like 80s pop culture. Like, what would the world look like if all of humanity was just done virtually? So
yeah, I read Ready Player One, which is hysterical because I know nothing about video games. I've played like 2 video games in my life. And even though I did not know any of these video games that they were speaking of, I did not recognize the name or what the point of them was, I would still say it's excellent for non-video game people, because I had no idea what like Galactica or Gallica or whatever it is. I don't know what that is, but it was a great book. So if you're not a video game person, so you've been putting off reading it, I agree with Ready Player One. Even though I don't know video games, it is still excellent. So for the next question, what song can you count on to pump you up?
So having done like training and stuff like that, and days where you're going on like, you know, 5-6 mile runs because you got to get cardio up.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
It is. I hate running so much. There's always like certain songs that you kind of like would go to as like your running song, or like you're about to get punched in the face and you need to kind of get the adrenaline pumping so that it doesn't hurt as much. And so one of my all-time favorite bands is Seether, and they have a song, Rise Above This, that was written when the lead singer's brother committed suicide. And so he wrote Rise Above This as a tribute to his brother. And it's a really cool music video, but then the song is pretty much just around the concept of, yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to keep kicking you down, but you just need to keep rising above this. And it's a very alternative rock, so it's very, you know, guitar riffs and stuff like that, which is, you know, if that's not your kind of music, you might not like it, but the message itself, like, is just really profound. And I've always kind of gone back to that song as like, well, I'm having a bad day, or I'm in an off mood. I'm going to play this song and I'm just going to like get my head right. That
sounds amazing. I'll have to check that song out. Now, what would you want the tagline for your life to be?
So it's obviously changed since I've had a kid. So I'm going to go with that, because that's obviously the tagline that's going to matter more now, with having to make sure that this little thing doesn't, you know, die.
That's a big responsibility, man.
It is. So honestly, it's going to be very, very short. Just always keep pushing. You know, I've had a lot of things in the past that, you know, you kind of see mistakes and you kind of have to reevaluate all these different things, especially now after having a kid, and just kind of, you get that mindset of just, all right, you know, I just got to keep pushing. All right, today was a bad day, or this thing isn't going well. Oh, well, I'm going to keep learning this, you know, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to do something today that, you know, I'm supposed to do. I'm not just going to sit around doing nothing. So that's to me is, just keep pushing no matter what it is.
I think that's great. And that's great even for people who don't have, tiny humans counting on them to stay alive. It's been a really rough year for everybody. And I think that we all have to just, remember that there is a light and we just have to keep shoving our way towards it. And, we're going to get there eventually. It's going to happen because it's got to. I refuse to accept anything else. So what is the most inspirational thing anyone has ever said to you?
So when you said this question, I kind of sat for a little bit and was trying to think, and this is going to seem like an odd answer because it's going to seem more insulting than it is inspiring. And it took me a long time to realize what he was actually saying. But I had a professor in college for an intro to law class. When you're going into business, you have to take like a basic law class. And I ended up doing well at the end, but in the beginning, I was like getting like C's on everything regardless of what I did. And I was talking to him one day and he goes, all right, I'm going to speak very candidly with you, because we had a pretty good relationship up to this point, as much as a, student professor can have. And he was like, I know you're kind of type. He goes, you've been smart your whole life, so you've barely tried. You got mediocre grades in high school. You're getting mediocre grades in classes you should easily be able to ace. And it's because you've been naturally smarter at most things, so you just have never tried. And he's like, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And if you can realize this in advance and you can start being proactively and trying, he's like, there's no limit to what you'll be able to do if you expand upon your natural preparedness and, smartness, which I don't think that's a word, but close enough. And it took a long time, like embarrassingly way too long for the lesson to really sink in. I heard it at the time, was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then still like for years didn't really put a lot of effort into some things. And then finally with kids and other life events, finally like the lesson sunk in of like, yeah, he was right. Like I can't just sit on my hands anymore and just kind of do everything day to day. And that's why for the past, 5 months, every day I've been teaching myself, whether it's Photoshop, Illustrator, video editing, audio editing. Every day I'm doing something, even if it's just for 45 minutes, I'm reading something, watching some video, even if it's a 10-minute YouTube video. And that's the only thing I do that day. That's 10 minutes more than I would have done, the year before. That's amazing. And I think it's so true that sometimes the things that inspire you most don't sound like particularly inspiring at the time. I think the most inspiring thing someone's ever said to me, and it was like, so I do musical theater. It's like my day job, which is weird. But I was a part of a horrible show that was going really, really badly. And our producer walked in after a tech run where like everything had gone wrong. Short of like the building catching on fire, we had covered all the bases of things going badly. And the producer walked into the rehearsal and said, well, kids, we got through the effer. We'll edit for podcast purposes, and walked back out. And strangely, that's the most inspiring thing I've ever heard anyone say, of like, the world's crumbling around us, but well, kid, we got through the effort. And, sometimes it's like things like that really help. And I think that is a very important thing to remember, especially in, crazy mad times like this, where it's not always at the top where you get the inspiration. Sometimes it's right before your fall or at the very bottom where you get those words that you just need now or need 10 years from now to help you get through something. And it's okay to not be on the top in this moment in time. It's okay. We're going to make it. Just hold on with your teeth and we will get through the other side. So where can people find you, your podcast, all of those wonderful things? Yeah, so I would try to keep everything pretty simple. Facebook, Twitter, you just go at Fandom Effect. You'll find me both on there. For the podcast, if you can think of a podcasting platform, I'm on there. Apple, Google, iHeart, Pandora's is getting up. Castbox, really anywhere you can think of, it's on there. So you guys can always also, if you ever are curious, you can shoot me a question through Facebook or the Fandom Effect podcast at gmail.com. usually pretty responsive to most emails. So any questions, if you're curious about something, I'd be happy to give any recommendations.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast to talk about being an epic fan of so many things. And hopefully people will get brave and go outside of their comfort zone and find something new to fall in love with, because, we can all use that. So thank you so much for coming on to chat.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.